Welcome fellow salespeople, sales leaders, and mental health advocates. I wanted to record a quick video to help show people why micromanagement in sales is actually a result of failing to provide reps and managers with proper mental health training, and how we can resolve this issue effectively. In a recent survey I did that had over 160 responses from salespeople, where I showed them a list of 16 potential sales mental health triggers, things like getting rejected, buyers ghosting, and starting back at zero every month, I asked them to select the top 3 triggers that impacted their mental health the most. The survey data showed the number one thing that impacts sales rep mental health the most is micromanagement by leadership, with 50% of salespeople listing it in their top 3. Most of us would define micromanagement in many of these ways. We might say it's due to a lack of trust, when a manager becomes a control freak and gives no autonomy to the sales rep. But this isn't the issue with micromanagement in sales. The first step to understanding and resolving micromanagement is to treat the relationship between manager and rep like a vertical couple. This is a term that was coined by the famous psychologist Daniel Goleman, who discovered that this bond is the single most important bond you can form in the workplace. Studies have found that the strength of the bond between manager and employee is the prime predictor of daily productivity and length of time someone spends at their job. Gallup estimates U.S. companies lose $360 billion from employees who have poor relationships with their boss. In order for this vertical couple to function effectively, both the manager and sales rep need to share the same perspective and effectively communicate with each other. When they do this, they have the best chance at working together to achieve their sales target. What this means is, if we want both members of the vertical couple to be performing at a high level, if we want them to be happy and mentally healthy while being able to effectively communicate with each other, we want both of them operating in the present. When we lose perspective and become too focused on something that has happened in the past, we start to get sad and depressed. Alternatively, we can also lose perspective when we become too focused on the future. Uncertainty and worry starts to build up, and we become anxious and stressed. In either situation, the manager or sales rep's performance will suffer. So as I mentioned, the couple works best when they are both operating in the present. They are both communicating effectively and focused on what they need to do in that moment in order to make meaningful progress towards their sales target. This is the ideal state, but rarely does this vertical couple function in this way in sales, so let's look at some scenarios. One scenario that could happen is the manager starts to get anxious. Maybe they start to get worried about their sales team's performance and how missing target this month will cost them their next promotion. In this scenario, the manager has lost perspective and is operating in the future. And typically, they will respond by micromanaging the team. They'll lose trust in them, become a control freak, and set unrealistic daily KPIs, all in response to their own anxiety. And as a result, this will obviously create tension in how this vertical couple communicates. Another scenario that happens is when the sales rep gets anxious. Now they're in the future freaking out about their sales target and getting worried about how they're going to pay rent this month, while the sales manager is trying to get them to focus less on the outcomes and get back to what they can control, like the effort, learning, and practice they are putting in each day in the present. Again, ineffective communication between the vertical couple because one part has lost perspective. Then there's another scenario when both the sales manager and sales rep lose perspective together. They are both anxious about their sales target and the consequences of missing, or they are both overwhelmed by the uncertainty COVID-19 has created in their industry. Sure, they'll be communicating effectively about how scary this stuff is, but since they're both focused on the future, both will be experiencing a massive blind spot. Neither one will be able to effectively problem solve a solution they need today because they're too caught up thinking about tomorrow. Since they can't find a solution, both will over-prioritize work and forget about what they need to do to rest and recover, like spending time with family, with friends, going for a walk, or getting a good night's rest. Self-care strategies that will help them regain perspective. So instead, they start to burn out. Their mental health declines, creating more issues at work and in their personal lives in the present. Things can also move in the opposite direction too, like when the manager gets depressed. Maybe the manager or sales leader had to let someone go, or they had a fight with their loved one at home. So they're stuck in the past, dwelling on this event and trying to process the emotions that are tied to them. As a result, they can't be totally present for their rep. They can't be there to effectively communicate and support their rep who has asked them to join them on the meeting with a massive client who's about to close. This is what I call absentee management. In most cases, it's usually the sales rep who can start to feel depressed more frequently because they are the ones playing the contact sport every day. They are the ones facing constant rejection. They are the ones missing targets, or they are the ones trying to cope with anger, frustration, and sadness they may feel when a buyer ghosts them. As we have learned, all of these trigger events can build up and start to impact our mental health, and as a result, make us less effective at selling. It's scenarios like these that we have a difficult time addressing as sales leaders, so performance towards our targets stalls. In these scenarios, we have trouble addressing this issue because we have a gap in our leadership training and skill set. As a result, we end up diagnosing the wrong problem. We perceive a sales rep who's underperforming as an issue with the sales rep's craft. So we go into our manager toolkit and try to fix the problem with things we know how to do. We try to teach things and look at things like, how do we get them to ask better questions or handle objections? Or we buy a new sales technology to hopefully make prospecting more efficient. But none of that works because the rep isn't struggling with their craft. They're struggling with their mental health. It's a mind issue. They're feeling like a failure, suffering from insomnia, or going through a divorce with their loved one. And in reality, the situation in vertical couple in sales looks way more like this. The mental health conversation can never take place because neither the rep nor the manager knows how to support their own mental health, let alone support someone else's. The trust between the manager and the sales rep has never been built to have a vulnerable conversation and effectively talk about their emotions. So performance continues to decline. Communication breaks down. Tension, mistrust, anger, and frustration builds up because the rep and the manager can no longer understand each other. Until what do we think happens? That's right. Real micromanagement takes over. The manager starts to worry about their future and starts hammering down on metrics, making bad decisions, and potentially letting someone go. Making bad decisions that are emotional instead of logical, which is game over. Or instead, the manager might start to feel like a failure and their mental health also starts to decline. This also moves them into the past and absentee management sets in, which means they are unable to effectively help the rep and other members on the team. In either case, it's game over and the vertical couple will have a tough time achieving their sales target. This is where resilience, EQ, and mental health training becomes so important. It helps keep the couple operating in the present. It acts like a shield and gives them the tools they need to protect their mental health so they can remain focused on crushing their sales target in the present rather than being overwhelmed by the uncertainty and stress of the future or slipping into a downward spiral and dwelling on the past. It also equips both members of the vertical couple with the tools that they need so that they can effectively identify and resolve mental health issues and mental mistakes quickly and effectively limit the impact that they have on sales performance. At this stage, you're probably like most sales leaders that I've been speaking with. You agree that mental health is important and EQ, resilience, and mental health training is something you want to implement with your team. But I've encountered three primary issues that create an adoption issue that sales leaders come across. One, stigma on their team is high and most sales leaders do not know who on their team is struggling. Two, there is an opportunity cost tied to sellers. What I mean by that is mental health training takes salespeople away from regular selling activities and time away from the phones. And since they don't know who on their team is struggling or how big the problem is, they're hesitant to invest time into this area. And then finally, three, this pandemic has everyone feeling overwhelmed and burnt out, and leaders are hesitant to add additional training that might overwhelm the team even further. So there are a few ways that we can resolve this adoption issue. First, we need to change our mindset towards mental health and sales. Far too many of us are trying to sprint a marathon in sales. We keep adding bigger targets and more metrics and failing to understand that sales is not a sprint, but a marathon. We need to build in rest and recovery periods into our sales process to keep performance high. Second, we need to change our mindset and realize that it's okay to slow down in order to speed up. Like a Formula One race car, we need to pull our sales team into the pit stop throughout the race, month, and quarter for regular tune-ups on their mind. Then finally, one of the best ways we can start to implement mental health, EQ, and resilience training is during new sales hire onboarding. It's during times like these that salespeople are already in the training mindset and they don't have a quota tied to them yet, which means there is no opportunity cost and it complements their onboarding workflow. It's like you're giving your sales rep and your players the helmets and pads during training so they can go out and play a contact sport without getting hurt. So to wrap this short video up, this is exactly what the Sales Health Alliance will help you do and will equip your sales team with the EQ, resilience, and mental health training they need to level up their mental game and perform under stress. I do this primarily through virtual lunch and learns, workshops, and speaking engagements with companies. I've also built an online training program to support current sales hires and could also be used as the perfect add-on to new sales hire onboarding training. And then finally, I also provide ongoing consulting and coaching to organizations looking to prioritize this topic on an ongoing basis. I've also built this company, the Sales Health Alliance, to be a resource first, business second, so you can find all sorts of free resources for your team on the website. But I just wanted to thank everyone for checking out this video. If you have any questions, drop me an email. But until next time, I look forward to supporting this conversation and creating more awareness around mental health and sales and helping your team level up their mental game. Talk to you soon.